social distancing, you say? The future is watching. Welcome to Opcode Virtual Summit.
Thank you, Matt, and thanks everybody for staying through this very interesting discussion. There was a lot of talk about disinformation, and now we're going to talk a bit about the opposite, which is information. In particular, we're going to talk a bit about how to know more about the things which are happening in your network at home. And actually, the idea for this talk, it came to me in 2016 in January when Rob Joyce, who used to be the head of the Tailored Access Operations Group at the NSA, I think that he moved on since to other positions, but he made a speech at the Usenix Enigma conference, and he said something very interesting that a lot of people already knew, but I guess that this was quite interesting confirmation of what we knew. And he said, I quote, "One of our worst nightmares is that out-of-band network tab that is really capturing all the data, understanding anomalous behavior that's going on, and someone paying attention to it." So you got to know your network, understand your network, because we are going to. Now, this was rather interesting from several points of view. In particular, for me, it was interesting because about, I guess, maybe 4 or 5 months before his talk, actually, I started tapping my home internet very much in the same way through an out-of-band network tap. And, well, what does it mean? Well, in terms of network OPSEC, speaking from 2020, work from home, everybody is pretty much, I guess, stuck at home unless you guys are living in Sweden or Belarus or other countries which have, let's say, non-orthodox policy where it comes to social isolation. So as we're spending more and more time at home, maybe I would say it's interesting for you and for everybody to spend some time as well looking at your network traffic. And there's actually quite, let's say, a few good reasons for that. Now, speaking about the basics and let's say threat modeling, let's think a bit about who are, let's say, the actors that you need to worry about. Well, the low profile actors are generally not a threat. So they will not be able to phish you or steal your credentials or maybe exploit you with a 2, 3, 5 years old exploit, because I guess everybody is by now patched. Um, on the other hand, pretty much all high profile actors, if they want, they can very easily infect you. And it's just a matter of cost justification. So if they can justify, let's say, spending $500,000 or $1 or $2 million on 0 days and using those 0 days on you, then I would say that's pretty much very little that you can do to stop them. So our assumption and objectives here would be that we are or will be infected, that this is just a fact. And we can't stop it because, again, it's just a matter of cost justification. And when this happens, what we actually want, we want to catch it. Now, remember that the infection is a matter of cost. And what we want to do, we'll try to increase the cost as much as possible. And the other thing to keep in mind is that routine is the opposite of security. So actually we want to keep changing our OPSEC, always adapting to the latest trends. And this is one of the things that I am doing myself, in case you're wondering. So today I'm just gonna speak about point number 1. And well, if I don't mess up things badly, maybe Matt will invite me in the future to speak about the other 2 points. But nevertheless, today we want to speak just about point number 1, which is how to monitor your home internet for APTs. Now, the reality is that the hardware requirements for this task are, let's say, not that complicated. So what we need obviously is an Ethernet internet it will be difficult, way more difficult to monitor fiber optic internet, but Ethernet internet can be quite easily monitored. And we'll need a hub or a smart switch, and we'll need a mini PC for this purpose as well. Now, for the Ethernet hub, you can still find them on eBay. Well, the sad part here is that you can't purchase them new anymore. I don't think that you can find this anymore. Still, you can find them on eBay for $10, $15. And keep in mind that a hub is not the same as a switch. A hub will just mirror the traffic through all the ports, and we're going to take advantage of that to monitor the internet traffic. Now, of course, I know what some of you will say. You'll say that we have gigabit at home, and don't worry, I've got you covered. Instead of a hub, you can actually use a smart switch. Stick switch for about $40. This is a gigabit switch with management. It is available pretty much everywhere. And there's also another option here, a Netgear switch, which pretty much can accomplish the same thing. So you want the smart managed versions of these routers, which have the ability to do port mirroring. So we're going to use port mirroring to replicate the internet traffic. Now, for the mini PC, um, you can either use something like an Intel NUC. Maybe you can convince Ryan Narain to send you a free NUC. I haven't, and or you can use a maybe Raspberry Pi version 4, which are quite powerful and quite cheap, in my opinion. Optional, you can also use an USB network card. And why do you need that? Well, we may want to do both tap and access into the mini PC. So this way, of course, you can connect the mini PC to your internal network, but then it will not be out of band anymore. Me personally, I have, let's say, very good experience using both EdiMax and Anchor adapters, which are like $10, $15. So the whole setup, um, I would say, costs between 150 and maybe $400. So this is what we have. The internet goes into the hub. The hub replicates one port into your Wi-Fi router. Another port goes into your mini PC. And then again, you can, if you want, you'll reduce the security a bit by doing it so, but it's maybe more convenient. Again, it will not be out of band anymore, but you can connect an USB Ethernet adapter to the mini PC back into the router, and then you can just log in there to see what's going on. Now, for the mini PC, I run Linux and Suricata version 3 Plus because we want the DNS log from Suricata. You want to enable DNS log, HTTP log, and the fast log with extended formats. You want to enable TLS log, and I personally disable stat log, which just fills the disk. For NetFlow, you can use PMACCTD. And if you're really paranoid and have a lot of disk space, I guess you can also just TCP dump um, pretty much everything. So one idea could be, for instance, not port 443, because dumping port 443 might not be very productive or useful. Uh, One of the issues here is that, for instance, streaming platforms like Netflix or I don't know HBO Go, they use port 80 for that. So if you're gonna watch, let's say, some 4K movies, you will fill your hard drive very quickly. Um, what do the logs look like? These are the kind of logs that Suricata produces. What you see here is a DNS log. You see a couple of queries. You see a couple of responses. I personally, I process these DNS logs into a much, let's say, easier to work with format, in which we have a timestamp, we have the host, and we have the respective IP resolution for that. And this I process in many different ways and you can obviously do the same. For instance, maybe one of the easiest things to do um, is shown here by this bash script. You can just take the logs. You can extract the DNS queries from the last couple of days or the last day, and then you can just make a top of the DNS queries and email them to you just to get an idea of how many queries are happening per day from your home. And there's, of course, many other ideas. There's also, let's say, an improvement. The first improvement to this method would be to have the network tap and then to have some IOCs that you can also check on the network traffic. And for instance, you can take a bunch of IOCs and can try to match them against the network traffic. My recommendation would be to match them both on the actual traffic and going back a couple of months, just in case, because sometimes you get IOCs and those IOCs are related to something which happened in the past. And together, this can also prove quite useful. Now, there's even more improvements that you can do. Some of the things that I am doing myself in terms of heuristics, for instance, would be a TLS certificates, TLS connections, SSL certificates analysis. For instance, looking for connections associated with hosts which have self-signed certificates. And this can be a very good giveaway of traffic that shouldn't be there. DNS queries frequency is another thing you can do. For instance, look for some kind of a pattern. You can apply Fourier transforms and find the DNS queries which happen regularly, such as maybe every hour or maybe every 6 hours, well, and so on and so on. Another thing to search for would be unusual domains, things like .pw or .cf or .tk, and there's a lot of these free domains out there, pretty much similar to dynamic DNS providers, which are also quite interesting to spot in the traffic. So all this are likely to boost your detection capabilities. And then other ideas could be, for instance, net flow analysis, extracting the top traffic IPs, uh, doing a whois lookup on them, and just flagging them for inspection. I do this regularly, and I filter out things like the Netflix IPs, like all the other streaming IPs. And what is left, obviously, whenever you see a spike in there, that requires some additional inspection. Now, all of this, I know it sounds quite nice, uh, but yeah, what can you find with this? And you guys are gonna say, um, you know, show us the money, show us what you found with it. So yeah, let me show you what I call case number one that was spotted by this technology. Um, I was like one day, you see that actually it was quite a long time ago, 2014. I was looking at my DNS logs and I spotted a suspicious looking host name, sechex.info or sesex.info. And if you look at the timestamps, you will probably notice that this is kind of happening regularly, almost like every hour. So what we have here, like 11 p.m., midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and so on. So this is pretty much what I was talking about. This is the case of something which is being queried once per hour, like regularly, with maybe some jitter correction. So it's not always on the same minute. So I started looking into this just to understand. The first thing, if I looked into the whois record of these hosts, and I noticed there are some Gmail, like pretty generic Gmail addresses associated with this, 310 Crescent at Gmail, Robert Statica at Gmail. Couldn't find, let's say, anything interesting on it. So I did a bit more digging. I tried to connect there on HTTPS. There's a blank page, nothing to see. Um, Doing a bit more digging, if you look into the certificate is also pretty generic. There's no organization in there. Well, it's issued by GoDaddy. It was valid for 1 year. So at this point, you can imagine that I became quite suspicious, and let's say I was quite confident that I caught something that shouldn't be in there. This shouldn't be in my network traffic. Also, by just Googling for setchecks.info, you back then you wouldn't find much. So there was like pretty much nothing in there. So I decided just to block it because I control my own DNS server. Maybe we can talk about this another time, how to set up your own blocking DNS using Pi-hole and various blocking lists. But I just blocked it for my home network. And then, you know, I kind of suspiciously discovered that also the amount of queries that I was getting, they were more or less matching what appeared to be some kind of a pattern. So if you look into this graphic, which is by hours, you notice that the amount of connections is lower between maybe 12 and 6, 7 p.m. And to be honest, I was wondering why that is the case. So keep looking. Is actually making these queries. Um, Funny thing is that when I started counting the amount of devices in my home network, I've reached a funny number of about 34 different devices connected to the internet. So that includes like a bunch of smart TVs, tablets, mobile phones, uh, network attached storages, smartwatches, and so on and so on. 34 different devices were connected. But well, what was going on here, obviously, the amount of queries was smaller between 1 and 6. And actually, that was the time when I was mostly in the office. And I realized that this is likely something that I am taking with me to the office. So, doing a bit more digging, I was able to find what it was. This was actually an app called Wicker that I was using back then, um, which stopped working actually after I blocked segex or sesex.info in my DNS server. Uh, Kind of mystery solved, I would say. It still gave me a bit of a panic, as it wasn't, I would say, very obvious that it wasn't like communication to wicker.com or even wicker.info. It was just this shady sesex.info domain with no whois or registration information about it. Yeah. Um, well, case number two. So again, all this, to be honest, I found them not by scripting, but I found them by just looking at the logs. If you remember what Rob Joyce was saying, someone paying attention to the logs can sometimes be quite powerful. So as I was looking through the HTTP logs this time, I noticed that again, exactly every hour, you said like 3:38, 4:38, 5:38, 6:39. So there's like a very small delay and so on and so on. Every hour, there's an HTTP connection to an IP address. There's no host name here, so there was nothing in the DNS logs. And the path is something CGI being client CGI and some serial or indicator, and the user agent was wget. So again, something very shady happening every hour. Um, well, this I would say was also very, very suspicious. So I started digging. The connections were all to port 8000. So I probed the host a bit just to see what's in the air. Um, it was basically in South Korea, the generic KRNYC network. So not much you can discover from this, like who is actually behind this IP address and the traffic happening in your home. And spawning, let's say, into the traffic, well, I was able to find the reason for that. And well, it was a network attached storage, an extremer network attached storage that I purchased a couple of years ago. And I'm no longer using it, just in case you're wondering. What is interesting about this network attached storage is that this function, this beaming to their one of their command and control servers actually had a buffer overflow in it. So with my colleague Vitaly Kamlyuk, we reversed engineered the binary that was doing this traffic on the NAS was running from cron hourly, and they were actually reading data from a network socket onto a buffer located on the stack that had a fixed size of about 200 bytes. So like super easy to exploit for somebody who wanted, if they wanted, and they had access to the network traffic. Not to mention that this could have been exploited very easily uh, by the obviously by the owners of this server. And I know there's a question from Dave in the chat. Hey Dave, hope you're doing fine. Thanks for joining this uh, op, opcode call. Um, how many implants actually add jitter to bypass statistical analysis of this type? Like every hour plus minus rand of 30. Actually, I'd be surprised that there are quite a few. Um, Especially, there's quite a few of them when we speak about high-end APTs. So all high-end APTs actually do that. They do add this jitter. And we've seen quite funny cases when, let's say, the developers from a certain APT, they prefer, let's say, a very specific type of jitter, and by just looking for that jitter code alone, you can find more of their implants. So on one hand, obviously, this can bypass or fool statistical analysis. On the other hand, it can be helpful to catch the implants themselves. Um, yeah, so next time, I think, again, as I said, if Matt wants to have me again, we can talk a bit about increasing the cost, complicating targeting and exploitation, which I guess are the next steps. Pretty much, I guess, getting more visibility is the pretty much the most basic step that you can take when you want to, let's say, to do a bit better. Just if you care about OPSEC, if you care about yourself getting attacked, the most basic step is
Just
to
for the record, you're
put a
welcome
network
to come
tab
back
on your
anytime.
home internet. And in reality, you don't know what's flowing through your home internet link unless you tap it. So I've been tapping my home internet now for about 6 years, I guess. And I can tell you that it can be done very easily with a relatively simple hardware configuration. A lot of people are scared about doing this in the sense, oh, we need to install Linux and we need to buy a hub. And well, I can tell you that it can be done. I've been trying to convince Ryan Narain for many years to do this for his home. Still trying to convince him. Maybe one of these days we'll be able to do it. But I can guarantee that this offers a huge level of defense and awareness. Whenever there's some new report out there, whenever Kaspersky, Symantec, Trend Micro, whoever, ESET, you name it, they published a new report about some significant threat, you can just take those indicators and then you search them back against your DNS logs, HTTP logs, NetFlow, and you can very easily say if you have ever been affected by that threat or not. So far, I was not able to find any APT attacks on my network. That doesn't mean, of course, that I've never been attacked. Honestly, I do operate on the principle that my computer is owned by at least 3 APTs. So I try to combine, let's say, having different computers, having decoys, sometimes putting information there on the machine, uh, designed to deceive an attacker which has access, or just to, well, trigger a number of alarms and alerts. And one last thing that I would like to mention is that when you elevate the cost of SIGINT, remember that you will become a target for HUMINT. And that's pretty much all I have for today. Happy hunting, and I hope you guys stay safe. both in the cyber realm and against the invisible enemy.
Thanks, Costin. I just realized after I was on mute on Zoom, but you're more than welcome to come back anytime. And apparently, we'll confirm after, but it sounds like Ryan wants to host and moderate the next fireside chat, and you will be speaking with Dev if he's accepting. So that should be quite interesting. We all know that Ryan is a great moderator, so that should be quite cool. Yeah, I don't know if the chat has any more question. At some point, Dragos made a comment. He said you should use Dualcomm ETAP 2003 and two non-Realtek USB-free Ethernet adapters. So I don't know if you can say more about that in the chat, but yeah, that sounded interesting. Although I don't know any of those devices, so I'll not be able to comment on that.
Oh, yeah. A Shark Tap is also a good choice. I guess that the old-fashioned hardware hub, so the hub that just does the electronic port mirroring, is probably the safest solution. Indeed, using smart switches can be tricky, especially some of them get an IP address by the HCP. So there's absolutely like quite a few tricky issues there. But the old-fashioned hardware hub is the way to go for me.
So yeah, question from the chat. So you never found any APT?
In my home, again, I'm tapping my home. So in my home, I never found any APT. Obviously, we found quite a few APTs in other places, but at least in my home, I haven't found any. So far. This doesn't mean, again, that I haven't been hit. It just means that I need to work better at catching some.
Yeah, I mean, like that's my following question with that is since everyone is working from home now, like have you seen any like changes and in terms of like the behavior of attackers? Because it does make sense now for attackers to actually target like people's home, since well, everyone is working from home, right? Home is the office. Like when the bring your own device was a big like polemic, no, it's even worse. It's like literally like working from home.
Well, I guess that the overall amount of attacks, they're kind of now increasing. So in particular, when you look at attacks related to things like COVID keywords, then the number has been increasing a lot since the beginning of March. Yeah, that's probably when the spike began. Another thing was that we were kind of thinking that probably a Zoom a Zoom remote 0-day would now be priceless for a lot of attackers.
Yeah.
Imagine what can be accomplished with that. So I'm also looking forward to the next talk, speaking about Zoom security.
The next update from Zerodium on their table.
Yeah, I wonder if Zerodium will push a an update or notification in regards to Zoom 0 days. That would be interesting to see.
I can always try to invite Shaoki for the next roundtable between you and David. Maybe we'd accept.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, I doubt so, but that would be funny. Another question from the chat. One from Dave. If your house is in Moscow. Another one is a quick and dirty config to run 3 catalogs through the free CTI.
So the first one, home is in Moscow. No, actually, I'm based in Bucharest. I'm Romanian, and I've been living in Bucharest all my life. I've been to Moscow quite a few times, to be honest. It's beautiful. There are a lot of beautiful things to visit if you're into arts. Nevertheless, my home is in Bucharest. And let me see, what was the other question about?
Is there quick and dirty config to run 3 catalogs through free CTI?
Is there a quick and dirty config to run Suricata through FreeCTI? I can't say, to be honest, because I just built all my parsers myself, all the Suricata parsing and heuristics. I built them myself, so I can't say if there's a quick and dirty way for that.
Mm. And well, the follow-up question for that was like, does that make sense to do? It would just be too noisy.
I can't say again, but I would say that the way to go forward is just a lot of experimenting. So I didn't know what kind of heuristics to build when I started doing this. Um, it was all by experimenting, looking at the logs with the naked eye, and then trying to build heuristics based on the observations and what looked suspicious in the logs.
Another question from Yan. What's your opinion on using the following tools? Suricata for the IDS and some IOCs, and Zik for network security monitoring, and Rita for threat hunting in a home environment. What would be the hardware specs?
Um,
Can you
so
do that with
my
an Intel NUC, I guess?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like to be honest, the most recent generation of Intel NUCs is quite powerful. So you can get one with an i7 CPU. Um, well, obviously you'll have to invest. I guess the investment would be something in the range of $1,000 for the i7 NUC and memory plus an SSD. But again, I think it's a very worth investment. It will absolutely work. I can tell you that. This also depends a lot on the network speed. So, do you have a gigabit network connection? Do you have a 100 megabits? If you have a 100 megabits, you can do these things even with a cheaper hardware, such as maybe a generic 100 or $200 mini PC you can get on Amazon will handle 100 megabit traffic without problems. But if you want to do real-time gigabit pattern matching with Suricata, then you'll need the high-end Intel NUC.
Maybe we can get Intel to give away some NUC for the next edition. That would be a nice thing, so we can build some home lab to start tapping our homes.
I am absolutely for it.
And yeah. Anything you want to add, Costin? Just checking if there is more question. Like, I don't see any more questions so far.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Jeremy says about endpoint monitoring OS query. Well, yeah, that's a brilliant idea. Of course, you want to collect logs from all the endpoints that you have in the home. What I'm doing, I'm collecting both sys logs on the Unix and Mac OS machines, and then I'm collecting sysmon logs from the Windows machines. It's very good just to collect, store them somewhere. If at some point you get compromised, then you have information that you can sift through in order to find when it happened, how it happened, what triggered the attack, all these key elements which can help you figure out exactly what's going on and how you got compromised.
I think we have another question also. I have another non-relevant question for Costin from Dave. Does he see a particular movement towards different protocols for C2, aka is DNS tunneling common or only HTTPS? Or ...
Well, first of all, I want to say that Dave is asking all the right questions. So obviously he knows what he's talking about when asking these particular questions.
I'm not sure if like the ... is like the actual question or if it's before.
Got it. But yeah, we're seeing some, let's say, interesting protocols such as DNS tunneling. Yeah, there's a number of APT groups like, for instance, Oil Rig or Muddy Water who like DNS tunneling nowadays. The plain old HTTPS is probably still a favorite. Passive backdoors are also kind of, let's say, interesting. So when we speak about the truly high-end threat actors out there, they all kind of stand up for some, let's say, particular features. So one of them can be passive backdoors. So for instance, passive backdoors that react to ICMP traffic or UDP traffic or even HTTP traffic. So imagine dropping such a passive backdoor onto a web server and then doing all the CNS communication with the backdoor through HTTP requests into that machine. But I would say that pretty much all the high-end actors are have all sorts of tools in their toolboxes that use additional protocols, even if HTTPS is probably still the most popular choice. Even HTTP is still a popular choice, but yeah, we do see UDP-based communications. I'll give you another example. Recently, we did a red teaming pen testing exercise, and we decided to use WireGuard, which is a quite interesting modern VPN, but it can also be used in a very sneaky way together with a Raspberry Pi, just to drop something into a network. With the WireGuard VPN, it can be quite tricky to spot if you don't know what to look for.
Yeah, another follow-up question. What's the weirdest protocol use you have seen so far?
What's the weirdest protocol? Well, I would say there's maybe not necessarily the weirdest, but what's, in my opinion, the hardest to catch is Tor-based command and control. So there's a couple of backdoors out there which use a Tor-based CNC mechanism. So in that case, you just need to have a method of spotting Tor traffic from your home. And if you use Tor yourself, so if Tor is, let's say, legitimate traffic, then it can be extremely difficult to identify a backdoor communicating by Tor in your network. But yeah, there's a lot of exotic things out there. There's probably many stories and there's many things we can talk about here. I don't know if you have time, so maybe this is a good question to answer the next time we speak about OPSEC and increasing the cost of exploitation.
Well, that's a good question for Ariane to mark down for the next fire chat, for in 2 weeks. Since apparently Dev says like 2 weeks is not enough to prepare like slides for a keynote. Another question. What Suricata beaconing detection techniques are on your top list, except time patterns and protocol abuse?
Yeah, like I said, analysis of the SSL certificates can be quite productive in spotting connections to, let's say, unusual places. Obviously, I don't want to give away all my tricks because I'm pretty sure the APTs are listening. So
the APTs in the chat.
Tomorrow they will just simply adjust all their techniques in order to avoid the things that I'm talking about. So obviously this is something which I already assumed when I put together this talk. So yeah, without talking about everything, I would say the SSL certificate analysis, looking for traffic anomalies, pretty much all sorts of protocol anomalies that you can search for, and unusual protocols such as ICMP, UDP, they are in my, let's say, top 3, top 5.
Cool. Well, thanks again for joining us, Costin. It was a real pleasure to have you, and really interesting talk. And
thank you, Matt.
I hope Ryan is gonna manage to convince both you and Dave for the fireside chat for the 3rd edition of that virtual conference. That should be fun. And yeah, well, thanks again, Costin.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you. Bye bye.
Cheers.
Take
Bye.
care, everyone.